Welcome back to Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter Aftershow. I'm your host, Eric Sequeira, aka Mr. Honest, and today we're covering chapters 4 and 5 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 4 at Flourish and Blotts, and Chapter 5, the Whomping Willow. Now, if you've been following along, you'll notice I'm switching things up a little bit. Sometimes we'll do 3 chapters in an episode. That's usually the standard. Sometimes maybe we'll even do just one as the series progresses and more complex themes get added. And sometimes, like today, we'll do 2 chapters. And that's because I want to give each moment in this story the space it deserves. Not really thinking about the runtime of this episode, which will likely be shorter, but the overall story that comes with these 2 chapters. They flow together perfectly. One ends in chaos at a bookstore, and the next begins with the chaos at the gates of Hogwarts. So today, it's about the brawl and the crash. Let's move right into Chapter 4 at Flourish and Blotts. I like this chapter because we get to see a little bit behind what the Weasleys look like at home. And being saved by the Weasleys was probably the best thing that could have happened to Harry. He even says, I think towards the beginning of Chapter 5, that the time with the Weasleys was like the best he ever had. And he loved being noticed, and people were excited to have him around. And that is just such a thick memory that kind of stands out to me because he's so abused and not ignored, and he's treated horribly by the Dursleys that just anyone even giving him some acknowledgement is, well, it's special to him. So he doesn't really even want to leave the Weasleys. He finds it like a second home, really. And I love that because we all know what it's like to get close with a friend and then get to know their family really well. It's like another level of friendship. They become part of the family in a sense. And that's kind of what it's giving for Harry and Ron and the family. I like that there's so many Weasleys. I like and also feel bad for them being, in quotes, poor wizards. It even makes the audience feel a little uncomfortable because they don't have a lot of money and Harry does. And I don't know how many people, but like, I'm not very responsible with money. I'm pretty bad with it. I'm being honest with you. If I had that safe full of money and I saw what the Weasleys had, I definitely, as a 34-year-old man compared to this 12-year-old boy, let's just say that, I would probably say, look, you guys have housed me, you fed me, let me get a little extra out and give it to you just for the very delightful stay. And I don't think that would have been like too much of a handout, and I don't think it would have been too much off of Harry's pile. I mean, if I'm thinking of the same pile that we see in the movie, unless it's less than that, they're kind of overplaying it in the movie. I think personally, Harry's rich, the way to describe it. They left him a small fortune, is what it said. So mainly, this chapter takes place at the Weasleys, but also we go to Diagon Alley and we get to see what Nocturne Alley is. There's a little side street there we didn't know about. It's where all the dark wizarding stuff is sold and happens. It almost seems a little too evil to be allowed to be in such a prominent wizarding place. Something else I'm wondering before we get super into the chapter, how do people not notice the Hogwarts Express? Like, is it invisible to the naked eye? Is it is the route to Hogwarts in another dimension, or I don't know, because people can see the flying car, but they don't say anything about the Hogwarts Express. So there's got to be some magic involved where people can't see that. Maybe only students can see it. Similar to how we learn about these horses when you've witnessed death. That happens in book 5. And I won't go too far into that as it's spoiler territory. But I'm curious. I'm very curious at how the Hogwarts Express stays hidden and not questioned by the Muggles. Does it have a secret route that people aren't just allowed to go into this area of the world? Like there's stoppers and barriers, or is there a hex on the train? It's just very, very curious. And there is an answer to everything. It's just not really known, which is magic. We get to meet Lucius Malfoy. And we get to hear kind of what he thinks about Harry Potter and the Weasleys. And they think very lowly of the Weasleys. And they're very mean-spirited, this family. You can see where Draco gets it from, honestly. But he says to his son to be careful what you say about Harry Potter. He's everyone's hero about taking the Dark Lord out and whatnot. And there's always seemed to me like at this point even there's ulterior motives from the Malfoys. They are the scapegoat antagonists in most of the books, in my opinion. But then we move into Diagon Alley with the Weasleys, and for a moment we get to enjoy the warmth of their family life. Loud, messy, but filled with love. And Harry is right in the middle of it, and you can feel his happiness just being included. But then the scene tilts, like I said, with Flourish and Blotts. It's packed with fans of Gilderoy Lockhart. And while he steals the spotlight briefly, the real story is still about the Malfoys. We do get to see how self-indulgent and how proclaimed Gilderoy Lockhart is, self-proclaimed in a high esteem. He puts his whole all of his books on the reading list so he could sell more books. I think it's kind of a really funny character. I think he's more funny than when I was younger, even because I could see like the kind of characters J.K. Rowling's like making him out to be, someone who you almost can't stand, but you are very interested in because, well, he's a very interesting character to begin with. Lucius Malfoy is introduced as this embodiment of cold superiority. He doesn't just sneer at the Weasleys' poverty, he attacks their values, mocking Arthur's integrity and lifestyle. They get into a physical altercation. It's not just a rich man being rude. It's a man who believes status and wealth are everything, and compassion is weakness. I don't know how you can live your life having gone to Slytherin and then being the typical bad guy that people would make Slytherins out to be. But people are put in Slytherins for good reason, because they're meant to be there, and they'll probably want to be there. Draco, of course, mirrors his father, sharpening his rivalry with Harry, and then we get that clash. Arthur Weasley versus Lucius Malfoy. It's almost comic. Two grown men fighting in a bookstore. But beneath the humor is something wrong. It's compassion and humility, literally scrapping with arrogance and elitism. This chapter shows us that in the wizarding world, just like ours, magic doesn't erase injustice. It just creates new places for those divides to show themselves. And something I love about this moment, and a lot of moments in J.K. Rowling's writing of Harry Potter, it reminds me of real life. Even though it's in a magical community, it's real life, like where you got people who you care about deeply, who live with honesty and kindness, and then they get mocked for it by people who only care about money or appearances. I mean, that is so Hollywood. You know what I mean? There's a lot of elitism in Hollywood. I'm not trying to take you down, LA, but it's true. I lived there for just under a year of my life. Arthur Weasley is one of my favorite examples of this because he's not rich, he's not polished, but he's good, and that matters. That matters more than anything, really. More than anything Lucius could really ever buy as well. It's really comforting to see that in this story, because we all know how it's like to feel dismissed for not being flashy enough or not fitting someone else's definition of success. Arthur's fight with Lucius isn't just funny, it's a reminder that standing your ground with integrity has power, even if you end up on the floor of a bookstore or arguing with Apple Podcasts about getting your podcast up and running on their platform after 100+ episodes. Yes, there's an injustice. My podcast, Marvel Maniac and MCU Aftershow, has been listed as completed. I've been trying and dealing with Apple Podcast for over 3 months now, trying to get that tag off of my show so it can be properly promoted and put into their algorithms. And they're acting like they're acting completely like it's a science project to take a complete tag off of my podcast. So that's just my little rundown of Apple Podcasts. I would definitely recommend listening to another podcast platform. Apple Podcasts is so big. They're the Goliath to the younger creators, David, where they don't really care about the people making content, it seems, on their platform, especially if you're not well known yet. So little smear towards the big dog today, Apple, letting me down. They've been letting me down for months, and I gotta say, I'm tweeting them by the hour. Go to our link tree in the description. You can join me on social media. Show a little bit of support for the show by tweeting Apple Podcasts that we want notifications on Marvel Maniac. But this is a completely different podcast. I cross-promote. That was today's promotion. Thank you for listening. Let's go into Chapter 5, The Whomping Willow. Chapter 5 is one of those classic Rowling set pieces where something silly spirals into something terrifying. Harry and Ron can't get through the barrier to platform 9 3/4, even though it seems like they're on time, just in time. They panic. And instead of waiting or finding another way like they really should have, it should have been common sense just to think that maybe like Mr. and Mrs. Weasley would show back up in a few minutes. They take the flying Ford, the car, for a ride to Hogwarts. This isn't considered dumb by them. They just couldn't help themselves in thinking this was the best idea and probably in the back of Ron's head, the coolest idea. For Harry, the car is more than just a ride. It's a taste of freedom. It's belonging. He's with the Weasleys. He's heading to Hogwarts, and he'll do anything to get there. And for Ron, it is a chance to prove himself outside of the shadow of his older brothers. The flight starts whimsical, soaring over the countryside, laughing, following the Hogwarts Express. But as they get there to Hogwarts after a few hours, the car crashes down fast. Literally when they slam into the Whomping Willow, a tree that does hold significance in this book for a few different reasons in a few different books. And the willow isn't just a tree. It's a violent, alive, and it feels like a character in its own right. The damage to Ron's wand becomes a running joke later, almost like the whole book. But in this moment, it's also a symbol. Their rash choice leaves scars that won't just go away. I'm not talking about forehead lightning bolt scars, but in a way I am, I guess. What makes this chapter sting is the aftermath. Instead of being celebrated for their daring, escapades, Harry and Ron are shamed and scolded and nearly expelled. Snape takes a pleasure in putting them down and saying how bad of an idea it was. He even puts down, ever so slightly, Ron's dad for doing that to the car. Luckily, the car's nowhere to be found. It kicked all their stuff out of the car and just went off on its own. I think we may see it later. But it's just a lot of feels unfair, but if you really think about it, they shouldn't have done this. It's also a theme. In this world, even when you fight desperately just to belong, the systems in place are ready to punish you more than help you. I can't help but keep being reminded about Apple Podcasts failing me. The Whomping Willow reminds us that Hogwarts isn't always the safe haven we imagine. Sometimes the very place meant to protect you can also strike back when you step out of line. So, a pretty eventful pair of chapters. Not super long, but a lot happens in them. Let's talk closing thoughts. So between these two chapters, we get a pair of chaotic clashes. One is about ideology, compassion versus elitism, Arthur Weasley versus Lucius Malfoy. And the other is about consequence, Harry and Ron's desperate choice leading to punishment and scars that will soon follow them. Both remind us that magic doesn't erase conflict, it just reshapes it. I love Arthur Weasley's fascination with the Muggle stuff, and it's so playful and childish and fun up until Ron puts his dad's reputation at stake. So I really hope Mr. Weasley's going to be okay. I'm sure we'll hear from them, maybe via form of a red letter or something along the lines of that. This was a great book growing up and a great movie. I did see this one multiple times as well. Next time, we'll move deeper into the Chamber of Secrets. But for today, that's at Flourish and Blotts and the Whomping Willow. I would like you to click the link tree I put into the description of this episode. It will lead you to all my socials. You can also go follow me on anything that's listed there. It would mean a lot if you leave the show a positive review or a 5-star or a thumbs up, depending on where you're listening. Especially Apple, it goes a long way. And I know some of you already have done that, and that means the world. We will be back next week. I didn't acknowledge the week we missed. I did announce it on the other podcast, but I figured here we'd be okay. We didn't really miss a beat. We're back. Send me your thoughts, questions, concerns at magicmugglepod@gmail.com. There is a link to a Patreon in the link tree. Really, that's for Marvel Maniac and MCU Aftershow. What do you think? Should I combine these Patreons into one Patreon for both shows, or would it be wiser to do a separate Patreon for this show? Personally, we got a tip jar in the About section as well. If you'd like to support the show that way, you can. Never expected, always appreciated. And we'll talk more about maybe starting another place, maybe a Discord channel or a place where we can reconvene and assemble as fans of the Harry Potter universe. We got a lot to go through yet, and these 2 chapters were a lot of fun to talk about with you. Again, I'm Eric Sequeira, aka Mr. Honest, and until next week, going into Chapter 6, starting with Gilderoy Lockhart, we'll learn a lot more about this man. Until then, wands down, hearts full.